This is the Next Bite of Life podcast, the place to be to hear personal stories from expats, digital nomads, and everybody else taking their next bite of life. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Next Bite of Life podcast. My name is From what you're used to hearing, I am talking today with Martin Armitage, and he is a hiker and a traveler. And so we're going to hear all about his journeys and, life in general. So please say hello to everyone, Martin.
Hello, everybody. And thank you, Kem, for having me on your podcast.
Oh, I'm so pleased because, I've been wondering because when I first found out about travel and travel with hiking involved, I'm like, what? Oh no, that's not for me. But then the more I talked to your wife, I was all like, oh, okay, so maybe I could see some of that. So I think we'll have a really interesting conversation, at least, and for people thinking about, exercise or hiking, this will be a great way to get into it a little bit. Let's start off with life now. Where are you right now?
At this point, I'm doing a lot of day hiking, preparing for a through hike of the Tahoe Rim Trail, which goes around Lake Tahoe to California, Nevada. It's a 170-mile hike. And now that the weather's warming up in upstate New York, I'm getting my biking legs on and going out and doing my long distance biking because one of my goals is to be able to do a multi-day bike trip.
I mean, that's really ambitious, but it's, it sounds great and it sounds fantastic. Now, your love for hiking, did it start with your Boy Scout years? Please tell us a little bit about that.
Well, actually, I wasn't a Boy Scout for a youth, or I only was briefly. My love for hiking started at 7 years old. My father took me on a backpacking trip to the Delaware Water Gap, which is in New Jersey, or the New Jersey-Pennsylvania border, actually. I grew up just outside New York City. So the idea of only having to drive 40 or 50 miles and doing something like that kind of was mind-blowing. I remember telling my friends or my classmates what I did, and they laughed. And my teacher said, no, there's this trail that runs from Georgia to Maine. It actually goes through the state of New Jersey.
Wow.
And I remember my father pointing that out to me. When we were hiking, we saw the white blazes, and he explained to me that these white blazes allow people to walk from Georgia to Maine. And he talked to me about through hiking a little bit, the culture, what people do. Back in the 70s, it wasn't nearly as popular as it is now. But for me, it was like I got home and ran to the library. I grew up around the corner from our public library and started doing research and wanted to see where all the states were that the trail went through. And that's really where I got bitten for backpacking. And from that point on, I was blessed with an older brother who I could nag into taking me on trips from time to time until I was able to try. 8 years older than me.
Oh, okay. So you were like that, gnat of a brother who kept bugging him?
Yeah. At 9 years old, I was 9 when he got his driver's license. So that was like really cool. It was like, John, why don't we go backpacking? Why don't we take a trip up to the Delaware Water Gap or Stokes State Forest? And a couple of times a year, he'd give in and actually take me.
So he's not, in any sense a backpacker or an outdoor person. He just did it because he wanted to please his little brother.
Yeah, he liked the outdoors. He liked fishing. But as we got older, I can remember, once we became adults and we had our own families, he didn't even really care much for car camping. He goes, I don't know, it gets cold sleeping on the ground. I'd rather be in a bed.
I am so with him. I am so with him there. It's like enough of that outdoorsy stuff. So you were a Boy Scout volunteer, not an actual Boy Scout. For how long?
Right, my time. Well, I was as a youth. I think I spent less than 2 years and wasn't even very active. But as a volunteer, as an adult, it was 22 years. I was an adult with the Boy Scouts for 22 years. Yeah.
So you've guided quite a few young folks into hiking and helping them develop such a wonderful, healthy lifestyle.
I would hope that what I was doing there was influencing some of these young men, if anything, to maybe have some good outdoor ethics, whether they became backpackers, hikers, or fisher, and that they just took away from the program how to respect the environment. But it is very cool when I hear from one of these young men, because now they're adults.
Yeah.
that they've done something like they're hiking the high peaks in the Adirondacks. One of the
Wow.
boys that was in our troop just hiked the Long Trail last year, and I got to
That's
tell you that was really fun to hear from
yeah.
him because he was sending me messages while he was hiking saying I stayed at this place, and I was like, Graham, I stayed there in 2017 when I hiked the Long Trail, so it was kind of fun.
Wow. That's great. It's very inspiring. Now, your website is called papabearhikes.com. And that's,
Yes.
once again, it's papabearhikes.com. And your tagline is Outdoor Enthusiast Paradise. Now, tell us a little bit about like what comes along with that paradise.
As time has gone on, there's just so many distractions in our lives. There's like this digital overload. And I know we keep hearing so much about that, right? We have our social media, our computers, our
Mhm.
TVs, my own personal experience. When we can get away, when we unplug, so to speak,
Yeah.
we really can start to enjoy life. We can enjoy the company of others better. We get to know if we're hiking or biking or paddling with others, with our friends or our loved ones, we get to know them better because we're having good, meaningful conversation.
Yeah.
And yeah, to me, it's just, yeah, I mean, it's great to get out in the woods. It's beautiful out there. But sometimes just taking a bike ride on a road with a friend or something, that's fun too. So yeah, the paradise is you kind of escaping maybe the real world, I guess you can
Yeah.
say. It is the real world, but the real world 2022.
Exactly. I mean, when you think about it, like you say, unplugging really does do a lot for the soul. You don't even realize it because you're so used to, you wake up in the morning and the first thing you do is turn on the phone and, you're checking everything. You can't go anywhere without having this thing hooked to you. It's part of you. And so to like, disconnect from that and actually be outside, you tend to appreciate the simple things.
Yeah,
That is
Kim, I
paradise.
don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to sound like an old curmudgeon here, but I think yeah, we've become so wired. I was out to dinner a few months ago, and my son and I looked over at a table, and there were four people. And by the time they left, he turned to me, and says, "Dad, I don't think they picked up their heads from their phone more than once or twice, maybe to eat some food,
Wow.
but they
That's so
sat there like looking down at their phones through their meal."
I
So
mean,
yeah, can you imagine you go out with another couple or two for a group of friends, and you spend your time looking at your phones.
wow. It's just insane. I mean, yeah, it's become at that point where it's just like, is this all there is? You go to work, you come in and you do, but why do we need to have this thing with us all the time? That's the one part that I can't figure out. And I'm so glad that there are people like you who are encouraging other people to go out and enjoy really nature. I mean, does it get any better than that? Really?
Right, and you can bring your phone. I bring my phone. I have map apps on there, but I put it
Mhm.
into airplane mode. And I have a
Yeah.
rule. I'm not going to look at messages, anything, phone calls when I get in the car and head out until I get back in the car to go home. I am not going to look. It's in airplane mode. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in touch. I don't want anybody to be able to reach me.
Exactly. We kind of forget that there was a life before that. And we kind of forget also, and I think this happens to a lot of people, especially I know some of my friends are like, I am so important. People need to reach me every day. And it's like, I'm sorry, you're not really that important. They can get along without you. So just chill, right?
Exactly. And
And
like
that's
I always like to think, yeah, I'm not that important. And if it's really an emergency and I'm 2 hours away and I'm 5 miles into a 10-mile hike, I'm not. I'm not going to be able to
exactly
drop
what
what
are
I'm
you
doing and deal with the emergency.
yeah, except you worry, they worry. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense,
Well,
right? It's
and it
like,
takes away from your enjoyment, right?
I
Because now you have
know.
that stress,
It's like I'm miserable. I'd like to share with you. Thank you very much. No, thank you.
right? Right. I'm sitting here staring at my computer, miserable. Now I'm going to ruin your time in the outdoors.
Exactly. And it's always like it starts with I hate to bother you, but
Right. You're right. Then why, if you hate to, then why are you bothering
exactly.
me?
Now, hiking. Now, what do you think? Why do you think everybody? I mean, we know that they need to like take a rest and do this, but would you recommend hiking for like everybody? Or would you say no, only the fit people or is there a place to draw the line?
hiking is an activity anyone can do, and this is something I emphasize on my podcast, and I now have the YouTube channel Martin Outside. Something I feel very strongly about is that there is a hiking. You can find something that meets your ability, anybody's ability, and that ability might be just walking around your neighborhood. It might be through hiking something like the Appalachian Trail, the Camino
Mhm,
de Santiago. There are a
mhm.
number of hikes. You can go out there and say, you know what, my ability might only allow me to go walk around my block. For
Yeah.
example, my mother, who's in her 80s,
Mhm.
she hikes and she just walks. You can call it a hike, but she calls it a walk, but she's
Yeah,
getting her exercise. And
exactly.
feels that it's very important. She feels getting out and getting that fresh air, stretching my legs is very important.
Yeah. I actually have friends that they have some people came from San Francisco and they met them here in Valencia, and they're right now doing the Santiago de Compostela trail. And she worked out all year long to do it because she had the idea of doing it, and then she got 11 people and it was supposed to be 12, but I was all like, I'm not doing that, because a little too intense for me. I walk around the neighborhood, I walk around the dogs, but going outside and be nah, that's not really my thing. Until of course I went to your website, papabearhikes.com, and I saw you had a section on the hike and wine. Tell us about that. Now that would make me hike.
And again, you could find something that's appealing to anybody. Something with the Camino de Santiago. It's a different type of backpacking experience. People bike the Camino, uh, but
Oh, I didn't know that.
you can hike to sleep in a hostel if that's your style. Or I think there's bed and breakfast or Airbnbs. But yeah, hiking. My friends and I are. I don't know. We think of ourselves as avid beer drinkers with a hiking problem. uh,
Oh, that's great. I'm going to steal that one.
but what makes it paradise, what makes it so much fun is, yeah, that's as much as part of the fun as when we get out there and hike. And I was like, okay, so where are we going to stop on the way home and have a beer? I joke about it, but it's just we just have a beer. We're not heavy drinkers.
Mhm,
To have a beer and a meal. But there's also Views and Brews, which is something that's growing here in the United States. We have one here in New York. I did an episode on it, and it's just hikes that meet almost anyone's ability to go out and hike, and then go to one of these craft breweries and have a beer and something to eat. Also, in the Finger Lakes, we've got these wineries that you can go out and do these hikes and finish it up by going to a winery and doing the same
mhm.
thing. Sit down, have a glass of wine and a bite to eat.
That's fantastic. Now, it's also, I assume, a place to meet new people too, like, people that share your passion for either wine or hiking, or is it more like
Well,
you have to book a table and that's it?
no, it's pretty much you go in there and it's very common to walk into these places and look around and see the other hikers. And occasionally the conversation starts picking up. Oh, you guys hiked over to this summit today? Oh, yeah, we were over there last week. We did this one today. And a lot of times, yeah, you're finding other people. For example, there's the West Kill Brewery in New York. And
Mhm,
this place is so cool. It's like when it opened up,
mhm.
you would have thought, okay, this place is not going to last. It's on a road that nobody drives on. Only people
Yeah.
that drive on this road are hikers. Okay.
Okay.
And we thought the place is so cool. It's kind of, they still have this hand painted sign up that says beer with an arrow pointing to their location. But the place is packed. You go in
Wow.
there and it's 90% of the people in there are doing something outdoors, whether they've biked, hiked, maybe they've paddled one of the creeks up there or done some fishing. As a matter of fact, I interviewed somebody from Montana that had been there. That he said, "Yeah, we stopped at that place," and I thought, that's and you're meeting people with similar interests.
That's
And in
great
our
because
case, it's sometimes it could give your spouses or their non hiking friends an opportunity to meet up with you afterwards.
yes. And they also get to, learn more about it, which is exactly what I told my friend when you get back, talk to me about it. She posts pictures every day. So I'm seeing it and go, oh, that doesn't look so bad. But I think before I was so scared of doing it. But now I'm like, yeah, maybe, I might think about it for next year, if they do it again, which she looks like she's having so much fun that she's already talking about yeah, we would do it again. So, maybe not pull somebody, like drag them into it, and just kind of let them find their own way,
Mhm.
especially with wine and beer.
Well, the Camino, there's actually a wine fountain on the Camino.
Oh
So
yeah, I
you can
know.
go fill up a flask with some wine, and what I and that's a trail I'd love to do because it is a totally different experience, a very unique experience, different from what we have available to us here in the United States. It's a
Yeah,
different type of traveling, and you do a traveling podcast. So with me, I travel just by foot, and the
yeah,
Camino, yeah, you have people that are traveling by foot across northern Spain,
yeah,
and there's a number of ways you can go about it. Some people bike it.
yeah.
And what I've read is village to village, you're getting a different the cuisine changes sometimes from village
Yes,
to
it's
village.
true. Yeah. Because I've been places where you run into them as they go in the middle of it, like in Burgos or something, and there's a whole bunch of them that come into the town, and so they talk about it, and you hear them, and it's like the food here, and then they go into the next place, and even though the different cities in Spain, the cuisine is completely different. So yeah, it's a great way to get to know the country, isn't it? But your
Ye
hike, I mean, the one you mentioned, the first one, the trail that you mentioned, it also sounds like, to me at least, because I don't know much about hiking, I just think like it's all the same. So to me, it sounds like the same, but you're saying it's not, like it's completely different. Why is it different? Is it because you don't stay in hostels or?
right. So, for example, the trail I have the most experience or trails I have the most experience on, the Appalachian Trail and the Long Trail. Here in the United States, when we speak of through hiking, backpacking, you're
Hmm.
hiking into the woods and you're gonna pack everything you need for a 4 or 5-day period. And then
Oh,
you'll go off, yeah, where people who hike the Camino, for example, and that's the one I reference because I've done research on it, but there are other trails in Europe that offer these same opportunities. There are people that will hike the Camino and not pack a tent because you can stay indoors your whole trip. They won't
oh,
pack any food because you're going through a village every day, and that's
oh,
part of the
hell
trip
no.
is to eat, right. Yeah, eating is as big a part of it as the walk and getting to your destination. Um, but when you're with what I did, the long trailer, I was packing food for 4 or 5 days
Hmm.
and then getting off the trail and going into town. And
Ah, I see. So it's
and when
something that
I
you do usually by yourself, or is it like, do you have like group hikes where it's a bunch of you?
you
Or is
can
it
get a group to go. You can do that. There are some lead hikes where, you can get a, guide to lead you through the hike. When I did mine, it was solo, and my wife was a little nervous about it at first, but
yeah.
I explained to her the time of year I was going, I might be by myself, but I was never really going to be alone, meaning that there were enough people out there that if something happened to me, I would see somebody during the course of the day that could help me.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I'm sure that made her feel better because I picture like this person with a backpack up in the woods somewhere, and that's it. Something happens to you, nobody's ever going to find you.
yeah, and there's a thought, people feel like you shouldn't hike by yourself. You should always go with a partner. So I'm not advocating hiking alone, but if
Hmm.
you're going to hike by yourself,
Hmm.
pick a spot, pick a trail during a time of year when other hikers will be out there, and that's you could do that on a lot of these trails. You could any of these long distance trails in the United States. You could say, all right, there's what they call the bubble, where the majority of people who are hiking the entire trail are going to be at any given time, and you just hike along with that, and you're never really by yourself. There's always other people, and there's no more generous community that I've come across than people who are part of the hiking community who will help out other hikers.
Okay. Hmm. That's interesting because this is new to me. Now, what would you say, like, of all the trails that you've got, what spot would you say, what, this is beautiful, this is mind blowing, this is probably the best place area that I've ever hiked?
Vermont,
Oh,
Mount
really?
Mansfield.
Ah.
When you first started asking, I said, "Wow, that's kind of a tough question." And then I just said, "No, wait a minute." I've always felt if there was a place if I was going to go back to Vermont, which I loved hiking the long trail, I'd go to Mount Mansfield and hike that again because it's just so beautiful up there.
Wow. See, I've been to Vermont, but of course, never, just been in the city, not. done a hike or anything like that, of course, but I can understand why you would think it was so beautiful, because it really is a beautiful place, isn't it? So you would go back there and say, "That's it. I would." How long did it take you on this hike? How long was it?
Well, I broke it up over the course of 2 years. The first year I
Oh,
was out
wow.
for, yeah, I was in 2016, I had knee surgery. So when I went back out in 2017, I was a little nervous about my knee. I twisted it on the first day. So I cut it short and then went back the second year to finish it up. So if I
Ah,
added it all up, it came to a little less than 4 weeks for me to do the trip. But I took my time. I,
yeah,
I took several things away from my trip to Vermont, but one of them was you really don't know a place until you've walked it. And
yeah,
what I mean by that are those experiences, those days when I got off the trail and went into town and stayed somewhere, stayed at whether it was a motel or a hostel,
yeah,
and walked around town, had a meal. That's when I really learned about those towns and Vermont and the culture, the hitchhiking I did.
yeah.
Uh, I had some people. The people in Vermont are incredible too. I hitchhiked over 100 miles one day when I was
Wow,
finishing up,
wow.
and that's actually what inspired me to write the book. I was like, all right, hiking
I
the
was
trail is
like,
one thing. A lot,
nice segue, because
yeah.
I'm going to mention the book now. I think you should tell us about your book and what the inspiration that you're saying that's what inspired you to write this book. Please tell us about it.
Okay, well, the inspiration came from this. There's two things. One was inspiration. One was a kick in the butt from my wife to go ahead and do it. But
You gotta love your wives, right?
yeah, there's always a spouse or a loved one behind everybody who follows through and does something,
Yeah,
right?
my husband is the same way.
Right. There's that person who is encouraging you because sometimes we doubt ourselves, and
Yes,
what could be mistaken for being lazy or procrastinating is self doubt.
yes.
But yeah, but when we have that person behind us, it certainly helps us get to the finish line. But the inspiration came. I was finishing up the long trail, but I had to hitchhike. I believe it was 102 or 98 miles back down. I had gotten to because I kind of hopped around on my hike. So I got up to Vermont, Johnson, Vermont, and I
Hmm.
needed to get down to Killington because I had a 15 or 18-mile section to finish up. So I decided I was just going to hitchhike all the way down there. I've had a lot of success hitchhiking in Vermont. There were days I came out onto the road, took off my pack, and a car would pull over.
Oh,
That's how
wow.
friendly the people are. Yeah. But I said, this will be a real challenge. Now I'm going to see exactly how friendly people in Vermont are. Right. So, so everybody that pulled over asked me, well, how far are you going? I'd say Killington. Well, I'm not going that far, but but I'm going to here. So they would
Okay.
drop me off and I'd get a ride a little bit further down the road. Well, that night I finished up and stayed at the inn on the long trail, which is it, the inn is practically on the trailhead for the Appalachian Trail and the long trail, right where they connect.
Hmm.
And a lot of hikers in there. Anybody that's been there that's hiked and they know it's like a hiker haven. They have it for the price. They give you this incredible breakfast. But anyway,
That's
I got
great.
there, took a shower, and I
Hmm.
was laying on my bed reflecting on these people I had talked to that day, the incredible people, the stories, the different personalities. And I said, you know what? I'm writing all this down. I didn't keep a trail journal while I was hiking, but I said, this I want to write down. This I want to remember. This
Yeah.
is as much fun as the hike was. This is the experience I want to remember. It was the generosity of these people, their
Mhm.
interesting stories.
That's
So then
great.
I went home and started telling my wife, and she says, there's a book in that. So to get the recognized by the long trail, at least back in 2018, you had to submit a journal, a trail journal. So I just, wrote down my notes as I recalled them as I went along.
Yes.
She read that and said, write the book, write a book about this. This is
Mm.
a fun, interesting story. And that's where the inspiration came. So, uh, yeah, because I realized that hiking isn't just saying, all right, I'm going to hike from point A to point B.
Yeah.
Hiking is about enjoying the journey. Don't focus on the destination. We don't all make it to the destination. But if we
True.
get out there for 1 or 2 or 3 days, we've probably done more than most people can. The people who might give you a hard time because you didn't complete your hike are people that wouldn't even be able to take a
Um,
step on the trail or wouldn't have the courage to do so.
always the big mouths.
So
Yeah.
I, again, with my injury, I mean, I set out to do it as a through hike because, here's the other inspiration from it. I had to, it was emotionally tough for me to decide after a week of hiking, I
Yeah.
needed, I'm not going to be able to finish it today.
Yeah.
I'm going to need to go home. I'm going to need to let my knee heal.
Yeah.
And I went home really burdened with this feeling of failure that I didn't finish this. And I took it hard. And I
Yeah.
think my wife picked up on that. And a week later, she said, "How are you feeling?" I said, "The knee's feeling a lot better." She says, "Well, why don't you just go out and do some more then? We still have time."
Yeah.
But I changed my approach. When I went back in 2017 to do some more hiking, my feelings were, and I remember saying this to my wife when she asked me, how long do you think you're going to hike for? I said, until I feel like I've hiked enough.
Yeah. So that
And I did
shows you
that.
were really ready.
Right. And I taught myself that going out there and just enjoying the moment was more important than finishing the trail.
Yeah.
That if I finished a trail, my friends and loved ones would be happy for me because
Yeah.
I did something I wanted to do. But they'd be equally happy for me if I came home and said, "Yeah, I backpacked for a week or for 10 days and had a good time."
Exactly. Which is still more than a lot of people do. Now, Martin, your
Mhm.
book is called Switching Gears, Rediscovering the Meaning of Life, Love, and Happiness while backpacking Vermont's Long Trail. Can you please repeat it for me? Because I know yours is more fluid.
Let's hope so. Let's hope I don't start having a dyslexic moment here. Switching gears, rediscovering meaning of life, love, and happiness while backpacking Vermont's Long Trail. Yep.
Great, because
And
I think like my handwriting is getting worse as I grow older. I'm like, what the heck did I write? So this book is available on Amazon via Kindle, and of course, I will have the notes. I will have this on the notes so you can purchase it. Now, Martin, for somebody who's interested in getting into hiking, name, like, for instance, you particularly, when you go out hiking, what shoes do you have on?
well, shoes are a tough question. You should have hiking appropriate shoes that will match the terrain you're going to hike on. If you're
Okay.
going into the backcountry, you should have shoes with a good tread on them, um, stiffer sole to them. But for as far as a brand goes, people really need to go to the store and try
Okay.
on several pairs of shoes, see what fits best. There's several brands out there that I can recommend that I've personally used: Merrell, Keen, Columbia. They all make good hiking shoes.
Okay.
People hike in their sneakers, but I wouldn't advise it. Going out and going to a go to a sporting goods store that carries, and some shoe stores have them, hiking
Okay.
shoes and boots.
Yeah.
Um, I happen to hike in what they call trail runners, which is a lower cut shoe. It works for me, but like I said, with footwear, everybody's a little different. Everybody's foot shaped a little different.
Hmm.
So footwear is something you want to pay a lot of attention to it. You don't want to go cheap on footwear. If you're getting started, if there's
That's a
one
good
place you're
point.
going to want to spend the money, it's your footwear. Exactly.
Yeah,
Because yeah, your feet are very important, right?
exactly. Blisters galore, right?
Yeah. Been there, done that.
I'm glad you mentioned that because it's very easy to think, after all, hiking, I'm just walking, so I can get, like, I don't know, the knockoff generic brand of the shoes, and they'll be just fine. But you can't ignore that, like you said. You need to, like, find ones that really fit you. Now, do you
Mhm.
recommend everybody take a backpack with them when they hike? I mean, is there like a specific gallon size or anything that they need to know as a beginner hiker? Like what
Well,
essential gear would you say?
if you're starting out, as opposed to the shoes, the backpack you can go cheap on. If a strap breaks or doesn't fit right, it's not that big a deal. It may be a little uncomfortable, but it's not going to hinder your trip. Uh, as far as the size of the day pack, for somebody starting out, I would say something in the neighborhood of 24 liters is a good
Oh,
size.
okay.
Beginner backpackers tend to overpack a little bit, or because they're starting out, they're not spending as much money, so they're buying bigger and heavier gear. So
Hmm.
something in a 24 to maybe 30 liter for beginners is a good size.
Okay. And how does one build up there? So we've got, do you need, okay, I know this is going to sound like a really stupid question, and I'm sure, I see people hiking and they have those two big sticks, that they walk with. Is that
Mhm.
really necessary?
Trekking poles. I started using trekking poles after my first knee surgery, and I was a little reluctant to do it, but I'm glad I do. Are they necessary? No. Will they help you in your hike? Yes. They take some weight off of your knees. Um, they're helpful for ascents. They're very helpful if you have a steep descent because I've had situations where I'm using them to help keep my balance or to,
Okay.
if my footing isn't very sure, I can take that pole and find a place to really press it in and put some weight on
Ah,
it as I'm going
okay.
downhill. I found
Okay.
them useful sometimes in stream crossings. Again, for
Ah.
the same reason, they're not going to support all your weight, but they can give you that little extra support to keep you
Ah, I
stable.
never knew that. I just thought people were just, it was some sort of thing. I really honestly thought it was just something to walk with. So in case you saw, an animal or something, you could like kick it or something. That's all I thought it was for. I didn't realize that you can actually use it to like steady yourself and do it. Makes sense now that I think about it. But it was just something I saw and just don't even, well, thank you for explaining that because it makes
Yeah, and
sense.
and it does take some of the bearing off of your knees, some of that load off of your knees while you're even on flat ground. Because the way you use them, you're planting them and you're using them. So it does take. I don't think it's a lot, but everything counts. And
Yeah.
so it helps in that regard. And it was just brought to my attention recently that when you use trekking poles, if you're doing this to lose weight or to stay in shape, you burn an extra 10 calories when you use trekking poles. Extra
Oh,
10 calories, I think, per hour.
oh, that's pretty good. Hey, every little bit helps. I guess you have to
Yeah.
you have to carry it and walk with it. So, yeah, that's fantastic. Now, is there like a minimum, like somebody starting out, for instance, is there a minimum amount of mileage you think they should do and work up? Is it something that you can progressively do over a short period of time, or is really becoming a real hiker something that takes a long time, like years?
Well, the term real hiker, as I said earlier, if you're somebody that walks around your neighborhood for your exercise and that's giving you your exercise, you can go home and say, I really got some exercise in. Well, then you're a hiker. I think that anybody who's just starting out, knowing your limits is maybe the most important thing.
Okay.
Start off small and work up. I've been through this when I was in scouting. We talked earlier about my experience in scouting. If you
Hmm.
want to turn somebody off to an activity, push them too hard the first time they go out.
Yes.
To tell somebody, if you want to be a quote real hiker, go out and hike, you have to hike 5 miles into the woods.
Yeah.
Well, they may be miserable because their bodies might not be ready for that yet.
Yeah.
So
Very
I
true.
would recommend anybody, know your body. And the best thing you can do if you're considering it, I mean, parks are all over the place. I would just find some sort of, even a book bag. If your kids it was an old book bag that your kids had from school, or if they're still in
Hmm.
school, throw some items in it and go to a local park and check your watch and just do a little, see how do I hold up if I walk for a half hour? I'm still feeling pretty good. I'm going to hike another hour. I'm going to walk another hour and see how I feel.
Hmm.
Get that start point and then you can build up.
Nice. Okay, that makes sense. Now, I will leave you with one last question before we go. And that is like, when you go hiking, is there a chance that you're going to run into some wild animals? I mean, like, that has to be scary for some people, or am I just wrong and that never happened?
Cam, that's the most common question that I get. And when I talk to other hikers, we laugh about it. It's like everybody says, aren't you afraid you're going to run into a bear?
Exactly, especially
And I'm like,
because your Papa Bear hikes and there's like two bears on your on your website.
oh, I'm Papa Bear. You think a bear's going to bother me?
Okay.
um, I'm the
so that
Papa Bear out there, Ken.
so you are so so wait a minute. That is the most common question people ask you because everybody's
It
like, "You're
is.
after this thing."
And you know what? I get it. I understand that. I interviewed a couple, a husband and wife, who were through hiking the Appalachian Trail this year. And at the end of the interview, I asked them, so any apprehensions where you step out on the trail, anything that has you a little anxious? And the wife said, bears. And I said, well, some things it's good to be afraid of. And,
Yes.
you know, they are out there. And I hike in black bear country. So not more of an issue. I'll get into that in just a second. This comes down to knowing the area you're hiking in. What is the wildlife in that area? And what do I need to do to keep myself safe? Black bears, grizzly bears behave differently. Grizzly bears can be aggressive. You need to know how to deal with a grizzly encounter if you have one. Black bears, for example, tend to be skittish. They run away. I have never had a close encounter with a bear. My closest encounter came 2 years ago in the Adirondacks. I was hiking. I was doing the Cranberry Lake 50 hike, and I
Mm.
heard a big thump behind me, like thump, like almost like a tree fell. I turned around, and it was a black bear running in the other direction.
Oh my
So I
God.
figured, okay, the bear probably heard me, ran up
Yeah.
the tree, and when it felt it was safe, it jumped down and ran in the other direction.
Oh my goodness. And then you kept running the other way, right? I hope we should.
Well, I got to tell you, that night, every little noise I heard outside my tent, I was like, I hope my food is hung high enough in the tree. I hope that bear didn't see me and say, okay, let me find out where he's camping and get into his food.
Yeah. That has
But
to
as
be
far as
scary.
it was startling, but it was kind of like when I got home, I just remember feeling like, okay, that's the closest encounter I've had with a bear, and it was okay. Here's an interesting statistic that I just found out. I did an episode on animal encounters,
Hmm.
and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I think it's you have a 1 in 2.1 million chance of being injured or killed by a black bear. Okay,
Okay.
uh, the chances are very slim. Less, it's like every other year there might be a death or an attack, not even a death, somebody being attacked by a black bear.
Hmm.
And again, I'm just addressing black bears. There are other
Yeah.
animals that behave differently that could pose a bigger danger.
Yeah.
But it's knowing the environment you're in. Well, you should be hanging your food and storing your food properly wherever you go, because black bears aren't the only ones who are going to get into your food.
Uh-huh.
Um, the truth is, mice, I think, are a bigger nuisance than bears if you don't store your food properly.
I see.
Mice, chipmunks, squirrels, they're more likely to get into your food even than a bear.
Oh
But
my
it's
goodness.
being educated about the area and
Yeah.
storing your food properly, doing dare I say, common sense things like don't bring your
Yeah.
food in your tent with you. Don't
It
cook in a
sounds very
lean-to.
telling.
Right. But people still make these mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Uh, if you spill food on your clothing, don't wear that clothing to bed
Yeah.
because there's other animals out there you might attract.
Exactly.
Um,
You don't even think about it, but
raccoons could
yeah.
be right. Raccoons are far more aggressive than bears.
Oof. I hate those little guys. I hate them with a
Yeah.
passion. I think I would be more scared
Yeah.
of the little ones than the big one, than the big bear, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, and they won't scare away. I was on a trip one time where we thought we had our food secured, and somebody left something out, and we heard some noise and looked over, and there were two raccoons going through the stuff, and
Wow.
we were trying to scare them away, and they would jump back about a foot and just go right back, like
Oh
daring us to go
wow.
over there.
And you're like, okay, you can go at it, and we'll come back later.
Yeah, yeah, but they were gonna they made it clear that's now their food.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're in my neck of the woods now.
Right. Yeah.
Well, thank you
But
so
for
much,
me, as
Mark.
far
Say it
yeah,
again. I'm sorry.
just for me, as far as bear encounter or animal encounters go, the only animal I'm struggling to get myself over are alligators. So I've been to Florida. I've bicycled in Florida, but yeah, people tell me that alligator attacks aren't common. Don't be afraid of them. I don't know. They look
You're
a lot
right.
scarier to me than a bear.
Don't be afraid of it. Sure.
Yeah, right.
No, thank you. Well, this has been really enlightening because you've told me so much about hiking, things I didn't know before. And to tell you the truth, I mean, if you know me, you know I am not any sort of nature girl at all. I like culture, but not nature. But you've got me actually thinking about it. So for anybody listening to this who's interested in hiking or being in the outdoors, please make sure you check out Martin's website, Papa Bear hikes.com, powerbearhikes.com. And you can also check out his book, Switching Gears, Rediscovering the Meaning of Life, Love, and Happiness While Backpacking Vermont's Long Trail. And like I said, it's available on Amazon, and I will also put it on the show notes so that you have that. So, Martin, thank you so much for talking to me today. It's been wonderful. I loved hearing about hiking.
Kim, thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed talking to you and and sharing this. It's thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the next show. Bye.